Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Views and News, and I'm Faisal Rahman live from our Islamabad studios. Today, the topic which we have picked up for discussion is about the Pakistan-Afghanistan border management. It is very evident and very clear that the Afghan soil is being used against Pakistan by the Indian intelligence agencies to sort of destabilize the country, in particular the province of Balochistan. When it comes to border management, obviously it is not a one-way story. Pakistan is doing whatever we could have done, but it is also the responsibility of the Afghan government. Now, since it's a porous border, families live on both sides of the border, and the ties they go back thousands of years back. But the interesting part is that we had no issue earlier. It is only recently that we have started getting the impression, and eventually we have also provided a lot of evidence that certain notorious characters are in Afghanistan carrying out the activities to create problem inside the Pakistani territory, whether it's Fatah, Karachi, Balochistan, or even Punjab for that matter. And Gilgit, obviously we can't rule out that state as well. Then we have also evidence that people like Kulbhushan Yadav, they were caught, they admitted that they were serving officers who were in RAW, and they were carrying out certain operations, and the local people were being used, and so these sort of whether you call them the assailants or the target killers or the suicidal bombers, in various forms and formats, they are trying their level best to destabilize Pakistan. This is the fifth generation warfare. Obviously, Pakistan is a nuclear state. We have a very strong army to look after the frontiers and the other internal and external affairs and the security issues. But when it comes to non-state actors, it is very, very difficult to put a filter. So one of the area which remained the topic of discussion and was very crucial to look into was the border management between Pakistan and Afghanistan. Now, since it's a huge border that starts from one corner all the way down to south, whether you talk about Pakistan, Afghanistan, or Pakistan, Iran even, what needs to be done? Obviously, the government has shown a lot of interest that they'll do it, but you can't make a wall, you can't put a fence the way Indians have done on the LOC or otherwise. It's a task and a half. Pakistan is not a country which is going to come up with ideas like Donald Trump that we're going to make a wall at the cost of the Mexicans. But having said that, something needs to be done, and it is very obvious. It's no more a theory; it's a reality that this particular border, whether you talk about Turkham or otherwise, there are so many other pockets from where these terrorists can infiltrate into Pakistani sides and can carry out activities. What needs to be done? How quickly it needs to be done? When it comes to the time period, Raza, the Interior Minister, said that Pakistan to control Afghan border by 2020. That means this is the end of 2016, so another 3 years from now. How difficult that challenge is going to be. Then there was another idea that whosoever crosses should have passports, and at least there should be an entry and exit on that. Is that a viable solution? And then you talk about the displacement of the Afghan Mahajirin, all those who moved to Pakistan 30 years ago, and the third generation was even born in Pakistan. Now they were told to leave. They have businesses here, they have the identity cards, they have the passports and everything. They own properties here. How to go about that formula also? When it comes to FATA reforms, that is another very important factor. But still, there's a word called stalled. So they are stalled as well. What exactly is going to happen then? The Jirga, various Jirgas, I would say, they've also refused that KPK should take over, or the FATA area should be merged as part of KPK. They have refused that part also, because they believe that the KPK doesn't have enough funds. So how can they? I mean, as far as the funds are concerned, they also look forward to get them from the federation, from the federal capital, from the federal government. So that is going to be a problem again. When you look at the statements issued by the Afghan ambassador, whether who is stationed in Pakistan or the one who is in New Delhi, I'll just quote one statement before I introduce my guest there, that the Afghan ambassador who's based in New Delhi really appreciated that the so-called strike, if you remember, that was conducted by the Indian forces in Pakistan, and he appreciated that. So we can well imagine what sort of a mindset these Afghanis have, or the Afghan government has. When you talk about 1100 kilometer trench that needs to be built alongside Pakistan-Afghan border, is that possible, or will it serve the purpose? Now, there are so many questions that we need to look into, and we need answers for that. To talk about this, we have with us on our right is Lieutenant General retired Mohammad Raza Khan Saab, former president of National Defence University. So thank you very much for taking out your time and being a part of our show. We also have with us Dr. Mohammad Khan Saab, needs introduction as a senior analyst. And in a little while, we'll be joined by Dr. Amna Mehmood. She is an IR expert. General Saab, border management. Now, we talk about border management, sir. We can build a wall as high as 30 foot, let's suppose. We can have the electrical wiring and everything done. But do you think it's very important? Things were very much in control. There was a time when you never had a problem with the western border. Things developed over a period of time. Maybe there were certain issues from the Pakistani side. There were a lot of issues from the Afghan side. Then obviously the involvement of India came in. A lot of people are still harboring in the Afghan side, and we do tell them, but nothing is happening so far. How important is that, sir? And whatever I just spoke about, all these formulas, do you think these are practical in this 2016 or 17 until 2020, sir?
You know, you spoke of a number of things that could be done. I think many countries in the world are already doing what you spoke about. Look in our immediate neighborhood. What have the Indians done? They have fenced almost the entire border with Pakistan, and they have also electrified it. That border is being monitored by their rangers and by the regular forces as well. It is effectively covered by fire and by observation. At many places, it is also mined. That is not the case in Kashmir, because then there is a disputed territory and there is an issue. Similarly, there are, I think if you leave out the European Union, international borders are usually fenced and marked very appropriately, and they are covered by observations. Sometimes, you know, they are covered by satellites and other means as well. So I think it will not be outside the fitness of things. You know, if you construct a fence on the Pakistan-Afghanistan border, and then it is jointly monitored by both Afghanistan as well as Pakistan. It is observed, you know, through satellites and also through other means, and at points, you know, other than the regular points. You made a mention of the Interior Minister. What he said was that by 2020 there would be about 20 crossing places in place where people you know would be facilitated to cross. Right now, I think there are more than 60 crossing points. And
so, well, he said that Pakistan will control all traffic from Afghanistan through 6 dedicated routes by 2020.
20. He talked of 20 points.
2020.
Yes.
No, 6 dedicated routes, sir.
No, let me tell you. You know, right now, you know, the major crossing points are 2. You are aware of that. You know, it is Chaman and Torkham,
Yeah.
where majority of the movement is taking place. You know, there are other smaller places like Angur Adda and so on and so forth. But what the Interior Minister meant was that by 2020 there will be close to 20 points. Okay. Right now the problem is, you know, that when you are talking of border management, then we can say that we are managing our borders. But when you look at the Afghans, they are saying this is not a border. So that is the issue. And then, you know, they start blaming you, and they start telling you that you control, you know, terrorists from your side, and you know, you stop them somewhere. So you say, where do we stop them? So they have no answer to that. So that is actually the main problem. But let me tell you, in the recent past, you know, there was this gate at Torkham, which was sometimes back, it was removed for administrative reasons, and the reasons were that the FWO had to construct a road from Torkham up to Jalalabad. It was for that reason that it was removed. And then when you started making it, you are aware, you know, that there was an exchange of fire.
Yes.
And, you know, both sides lost lives in that. But that is settled. I'm glad, we should be glad that it is settled. And similarly, you know, at Chaman also there is relative peace and relative calm. Both countries have signed, you know, a number of treaties, and you talk of whether it is the CASA project or whether it is the gas pipeline projects, you know, it is mentioned in all those treaties indirectly where these projects are going to cross over from Afghanistan to Pakistan. So that
Raza
actually
1000 in particular, yeah?
yes, so that actually becomes a problem. And unless, you know, you can specify that, you know, the places where Afghanistan's border ends and Pakistan's border starts, how can you implement, you know, the various economic projects?
Absolutely, sir.
So this is how it needs to be done. I think this is the first step that Afghanistan needs to recognize, you know, the Pakistan.
Jurun line as a proper border, sir.
Yes.
I'll come back to that, sir. But 2,400 kilometer long border, sir. That's a lot of distance, Dr. Saab. It's quite a lot of distance. And when you're talking about a porous border, I just would really like you to answer that. But first of all, let me welcome Dr. Amna. Thank you very much for being a part of our show, sir.
There are two issues. First is border management, and particularly we are concerned today the border management. And number two is that whether we are able to have the wall or wire that is fencing the border between Pakistan
Or even a
and
trench
Afghanistan.
for that matter.
Right. So managing border is one aspect, and having the walls or wires all along the border, that is another aspect. But perhaps the Interior Minister meant by having the border control and having few points in the days to come, that is by 2020, that was that for the time being, the movement along the Pakistan-Afghanistan border is irregular. And you know, as a result of that, it's not that there is a smuggling and all that, but more than that, there is a movement of the terrorist. And that movement of terrorist is that's a bigger problem for the Pakistan rather than for the Afghanistan. Because for the last 2 years or more than that, we are facing very seriously the threat from the Afghan side, not only in the Balochistan, but as a matter of fact, all along in the FATA areas. And you know that this North Waziristan Agency, South Waziristan Agency, many other areas, they were stabilized by the armed forces, they were stabilized by the army. But what happened? That later on it was revealed that people, the terrorists from the other side of the border, they infiltrated into the Pakistan territory, and they caused damages to the property, to the lives and all that. So that's indeed the very important aspect. Pakistan has been asking Afghanistan that better to have control as far as this movement is concerned, and thereafter Pakistan decided to, during the era of General Pervez Musharraf, even we offered Hamid Karzai that let's fence the border, but he refused. What General said,
So they do not recognize the border as a border, by the way. That's
remember,
another problem.
that is something wrong with them, not with the Pakistani. We understand that this is a Pakistan-Afghanistan border. We cannot call it a Durand line, because over the period of time, this process, this treaty, this got matured. And how can we say that after having 70 years as an independent country, today we cede some of the areas to the Afghanistan, that is, we cannot accommodate the demands of the other countries. If tomorrow they ask that if the Peshawar was part of the Afghanistan, should we accept that? So that I think we have to be very, very clearly, absolutely on two grounds, political and diplomatic. And I think Pakistan is absolutely clear. Number two, that whether and how to control this entire mechanism. I think there is a requirement of agreement between these two countries, or the already agreement we have between Pakistan and Afghanistan. Those have to be respected.
So there was this agreement between ISI and NDS. Nothing has happened on that front either. So agreement really doesn't hold any value as such.
Unfortunately,
This is what we have
this
witnessed
is the
earlier,
other
sir.
party. As a matter of fact, the other party is being dictated from our eastern neighbor.
That is where the
That's
problem
the
is.
issue.
You
That's
hit
the
the nail
issue.
now.
And I think we need to engage our eastern neighbor also. And some of the more, I would say that some of the activities, some of the acts, you were talking about refugees particularly, that after having stayed in Pakistan for say about 3 decades or more than that,
Yes, sir.
now they have their kids, those who have born in Pakistan, they have studied, they have their businesses and all that. Remember, Pakistanis, they have been very, very accommodative. And particularly the people from the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, FATA and Balochistan, they have been very, very accommodative. No, it was the responsibility of the Afghan government that they should have reciprocated that.
But they haven't.
Unfortunately not. And whatever the irk, whatever the, I would say that friction there is existing about the Afghan refugees
So
in
when
the
you say
Pakistan.
3 million, sir, 3 million is still a number.
Sir,
I'm
there was
sure
a
they are
time-
more than that.
So there
They're
was
more
a
than that.
time that it was 4.2 million. There was a time. And then, I mean, there's gradually and still I think
That is close to the population of Norway.
that's nice.
Imagine.
That's nice. So Pakistanis, they were never, they were very, very hospitable as far as the Afghan refugees were concerned, and we are still. But the problem is, once the Afghan leadership, they give such statements which unfortunately create the differences. That's the issue. Despite that, the government of the Pakistan has been accommodative. The people of the Pakistan, they have been accommodative. Now, I think there is a requirement that whosoever enter into the Pakistan or whosoever exit, I think there is need to have the proper border management, control of movement control, as per the documentation, as per as the agreement Pakistan and Afghanistan have. For that, I think Chaudhry Nisar, the Interior Minister, he issued a statement, and I think gradually we are having the better control.
So we need to have a proper agenda, we need to have proper points to ponder upon and at least materialize on them.
I think Afghan side is going to be more benefited if there is a.
So they always blame Pakistan that Mr. X conducted this operation in Kabul and he came from Pakistan, or it was Pakistan sponsored or something of that sort. So if we want to sort of counter that, then let us do what we can do.
I think if with the help of United States of America, they have the surveillance equipment which can see, which can survey anything while moving from point A to point B.
Unfortunately, there's a saying that where there's a will, there is a way.
Sure.
But if there is no will, then there can't be any way. When we talk about the Americans, let me go. You have raised a very important point, ma'am. Donald Trump is the kind of person who loves to build walls. So he has stated that we'll build a wall all along the Mexican border, and the Mexicans will pay for it, and they'll also build it, by the way. So that, since the idea is about the walls, do you think this man, once he comes in power on the 20th of January next year, if this idea is floated in its true spirit, he's going to buy it? Do you think so?
I think that it is a right of Pakistan under international law, and as
the
Dr.
Israelis have done the same. Indians have done the same. Not a wall, but a proper fence.
And when comes the point of Pakistan interest, they all back out. But I think that there are two issues. One, as Dr. pointed out, one is border management, and then other the control of movement. I think there are two basic type of people going through border every day. They are more than 10,000, or some say that they are more than 15,000, but it is the count of head which is just approximate, and there is no documentation on the basis of any law doing on both sides of the border. Pakistan is managing, but Afghanistan is not managing. One type of people are those the tribal people living across the border, and under the underlying agreement, they were given this opportunity to cross the border, but only people living on along the border, 5 miles in Pakistan and 5 miles in Afghanistan. So there should be proper documentation, that they should be issued identity cards or something like that, so they can cross with that document.
And those who are working should be given a working permit, so they can have a stamp on daily basis.
They can work. And the other people living in Afghanistan or Pakistan, they should have proper documentation like visa, and because they are not exempted from visa. If this is done, then there is no problem of movement. The other thing, that proper management is required from both sides. They are entering from Afghanistan without having any documentation, and Pakistan cannot manage to count that much number. They cannot check their documents. The third thing which I feel that is very important for Afghanistan, that they should provide all facilities to their citizens there on their side. While they claim that this area is going to be Pakistan area, they claim that they should be included in Afghanistan. They can't manage their own areas. For the last 70 years, they could not build even hospitals on the other side. People coming to Chaman for medical treatment, and how long they would claim
Forget
it on
about Chaman, man, you're Islamabad, PIMS.
How long they would continue to claim on humanitarian grounds that Pakistanis should serve their medical treatment and medical purposes.
By the way, if we totally, I'm not saying close the border, but put a very strict check, and no labour should be allowed to go, not allowed means, but there should be a proper system. If somebody goes to Afghanistan to work, or somebody comes from that side, because it's a landlocked city, landlocked country rather, do you think they can survive? Because as they say, tit for tat, let's do that.
They can survive very well, because they are self-sufficient in labor class at least. At least in labor class, they are sufficient. Their laborer are serving in Pakistan, On every road, on every railroad, in every factory, in every field, you can find Afghanis. They are working here. They should all be deported to back to Afghanistan because their country is war-wrecked. They need development and rehabilitation activities, and for that purpose, labor is required. They should move back. Then border should be closed. But
There should be a proper check.
in that sense, I am a hardliner.
Sir, you've served in forces for like 30 years or maybe more. General Saab, once I was interviewing General Aslam Beg and he said, well, this was my idea about the strategic depth. Is Afghanistan a strategic depth, sir? Or will it be in the future? If not, then what's the solution, sir? Why not to put a check and just say, okay, you're a separate country, we're a separate country, and we need to have a proper border, and we'll do it no matter what.
I think the two issues that you have raised are totally unrelated. I think somebody sometimes back may have, by way of verbosity, used that term, what you're calling strategic depth. I think that's a very old story, and nobody believes in that now, and I think so should we. Coming back to
Achak Singh Saab, he is very fond of the Afghan people.
that's a different issue.
But what I'm saying, sir, when you issue such
unfortunately-
statements,
Okay, so
then there is reaction.
So it comes to the politics of the issue. Unfortunately, politically, I think we are a very soft country. You compare yourselves with the attitude of what Iran or other neighbors of Afghanistan are, the attitude that they are and the treatment which they are meting out to Afghan refugees. They're very strict on that. To them, national security is the most important thing, and hospitality is secondary to that. To us, I think hospitality is more important than even national security. And in Pakistan, anyone can say anything, and I think nobody asked them. You made a mention of what Mr. Achak says. He probably wants another Afghanistan within Pakistan. This is ridiculous. And these are the kind of statements.
Afghania.
Yeah, these are the kinds of statements which actually makes our position even more difficult
And
more,
weak.
more untenable. You made a mention of walls, and you made a mention of trenches. They're not possible, with on our Afghan looking at the terrain.
Exactly.
The only feasible option is what we are partially selectively doing. We are doing selective fencing of the border where it is required, and I think that's a good idea. That is doable.
But Jalsa, people can practically cross the border on foot, on donkeys. There was a time when the smuggling used to take place on donkeys. They would load the electronics and even the drugs.
This is what I told you, that these are very high, lofty mountains, and it is only through those passes that animal transport can cross.
Yes, sir.
And I said there are a total of 60 points or so. If you look at them, from Google Map, probably you can clearly identify, and therefore they need, we need to control those areas very effectively. As I said, through observation, through fencing, if needed through fire, so that the movement is through only recognized points, whether they are 2 or 10 or 20. So that is the important thing to do. Otherwise, it's not only the movement of terrorists.
Correct, sir.
Or person, it is also the movements of goods, and you're talking of all kinds of goods, coming from Afghanistan to Pakistan, and even from here across. We're also talking about drugs. You know that Afghanistan, after the withdrawal of NATO ISAF in 2014, I think the drug trade has now increased, and I think that is also a bigger threat not only to Pakistan, but to the entire region and to the world.
Jalsa, is it true that the Americans are a part of the deal, and the war which is going on in Afghanistan is financed by drug money?
This is what the Americans are saying, that in the areas which are under the control of Taliban, they're saying, that they're collecting taxes from the opium money. This is what they...
But sir, these are the same Taliban when they were in power.
Yes.
If you remember, the production just went down like
It went
nosedive.
down. But with, even in the areas, many areas which are under the control of the Afghan National Security Forces, and the Americans, they are actually ignoring those areas because they don't want to annoy, the local population, because in many areas they think that that is their only source of livelihood. So they let them grow poppy and opium, and they don't bother them. So that is actually one major reason they are looking the other way around, and the drug trade in Afghanistan is a serious problem for them as well as for us. And you are right, that in many cases, money that is being collected.
Hamid Karzai's brother,
yes.
who was murdered, sir,
There you go. Yes.
was one of the biggest smugglers, and he was the main man in charge for the drug trafficking and everything,
Yes.
sir.
But the point again.
And I'm talking about a couple of dozen of billions of dollars, sir.
Okay, so other than the Afghans, who are the other stakeholders who would oppose the idea of proper border management is the Indians, because they have those 12 consulates here in southern Afghanistan, and the moment you put these restrictions and you start managing the border the way we are discussing,
They come under check.
yes, they'll come. So they are going to oppose this tooth and nail, and they're the ones who are now telling the Afghans, that they should not do that. And they are telling the Afghans that, look, if you do this, then what is going to happen to your claims, on Pakistani territory and stuff like that. But I think the Americans, NATO, ISAF, and the Europeans, they understand, they appreciate our viewpoint, and I think officially they have recognized this border as an international border. And they keep, I think, advising the Afghans that they should not make a mountain out of mole, and they should keep quiet about it, because they know that it is not only in the interest of peace in Afghanistan, it is also in the interest of all those countries and their forces that this border is effectively checked and it is effectively monitored, because unless that is done, I think the war in Afghanistan will go on, and it will be probably named what Obama, a few months said. He said that it may be a never-ending war. So it would be a never-ending war unless, proper control is exercised on this.
Absolutely. First of all, you need to understand what the problem is, and then you can come up with a solution. Now, sir, a couple of more points. If you remember, Pakistan was looking for, actually, we were not taking it in the form of a grant. We were looking forward to pay money and get those 8 F-16s. We didn't get them. You talk about the helicopters who were supposed to look after this border. Then we went for another option to go for Mi-35 helicopters from Russia. I mean, still I'm not sure what exactly is the status of the deal, but we need to do a couple of things at the same time. For example, the fencing, proper, and obviously you can keep a check on this side, but the other side needs to do something as well, which they are not willing. Even if they're willing, they are not allowed to because of the Indians, as General Saab earlier mentioned. So it is a task and a half, and it is not that simple the way it looks like. That build a wall, it's not like between two plots, plot number A and plot number B, and you build a wall and make them two. And then the will of the people, that is again a problem. I mean, most of these people who are in Pakistan, so they won't be happy, those who are living there, then the families, I mean, they live on both sides of the border. That is another problem. So, Dr. Khan, what should be the first priority, and what should be number 2, and what should be number 3 in terms of the list of priorities?
Okay, you know that the aim is not to annoy the people on both sides of the border, because there are relationships.
But people are getting annoyed. That's the unfortunate part.
I mean, annoyance is not the issue as a matter, and Pakistan would not like that Pakistan should annoy the people of Afghanistan, and Pakistani too, because they have relationship on both sides of the border. The families, they have the commonalities, they have, I would say that marriages, intermarriages and all that. The aim is that whether you have the proper documentation. That is the strict control as far as the border is concerned.
Right.
That once you move out to another country, definitely you have the documentation, you have the complete documents. Once you have the documents, I think government of the Pakistan will have no observation. Number one, that is more important, that Pakistan has to enforce. And in order to enforce that particular aspect, that a proper documentation, then you have to identify certain points, that is crossing points, border crossing points. And in order to identify those, then you cannot allow that 60 points which are currently being used in order to cross the border from either side. Then you have to restrict that. Reason being that you need to have the official security apparatus in place in that particular area, so that you make a control. So that is the second point, we need to do that, and Pakistan is indeed taking a step toward that. Number 3 is that with the passage of time, there are selective areas, as General said, that those are going to be fenced. Yes, that's requirement. Reason being that area, those selected areas where the border crossing will be allowed, that is going to be the very official. Then what about those areas which are still vulnerable, hostile areas? Then you know that geographically these are very difficult areas. So those areas need to be monitored both by Pakistan and Afghanistan. Reason being that terrorists they can cross, and once terrorists they can cross, then you leave a ground open. That is, tomorrow you can blame Pakistan, can blame Afghanistan, and vice versa. That's what is going on between Pakistan and Afghanistan. So in order to have that, I think Afghan leadership need to be more careful. Reason being that it is a reluctance of Afghan leadership that Pakistan has not been able to control the border as a whole. Otherwise, has there been a mechanism in place on the Afghan side of the Pak-Afghan border, and there has to be as there. I think we had at one particular time we had 1100 checkposts, 1100
Crossing points.
not crossing points, 1100 posts between Afghanistan and Pakistan border. This
100 kilometer long.
Yeah, we had 1100 posts.
So whether you have
military
1100 checkpoints, or that means even when the border is 2400 kilometer long, 1100 means that almost one checkpoint for every
yes,
20 kilometers or so.
I mean,
my point is, sir, my point is that how would you ensure that, let's suppose there is a mechanism that is developed that, well, you can come, you can work in Pakistan and go back, like Mexican, they come into
That's
USA
right.
and they go back, and there's a system, there's a mechanism, and you can learn from them. But how to ensure that the terrorists or the miscreants, you know, when they, it's about infiltration, how to sort of put a filter, because you know when a normal man, because nobody writes a word terrorist here, sir, you can just move in. How would you ensure that? Because I remember when this operation started in North Waziristan, there was a lot of displacement of the local people. They moved to Banu and they moved to DI Khan, and it was believed that a lot of these Taliban or the TTP members, they
too moved.
clean shaved and
Yeah.
they entered this area, and they might have been in Karachi or elsewhere. So that's what I'm saying. So how to put it is a very difficult task, but you need to do something about it.
For that, I think there's a requirement of the will, and the will has to be from both sides. If Pakistan has shown a will, and we made sure that no Afghan is given a refuge or hideout here in the Pakistan, then Afghan government, Afghan NDS, Afghan military, that is Afghan National Security Forces, they should have ensured accordingly the way Pakistan did it. Reason being that you know that after start of this operation, there was prior operations in Swat and Malakand. Thereafter, the operation was in South Waziristan Agency, Operation Raza and all that. A lot of number of Pakistani militants, they fled into Afghanistan, and people like Mullah Radio is still there in Afghanistan. And
Mullah
as
Fazlullah.
Mullah Fazlullah, known as Mullah Radio, he's still in Afghanistan. He's being looked after. Not only he, but along with him, there are many people, and those people, they are being trained, and then ultimately they are harbored into the Pakistan area where they create the problem. No, you asked that what we should do in order to control this movement of the terrorists and the militant elements. I think a will is required from the Kabul. Kabul has not been cooperating, and once Kabul has not been cooperating, I think Kabul is being dictated, and dictated from two sides, two aspects: financially as well as strategically.
Correct.
Financially, you know that if India has invested $2 billion and promised another $1 billion, then of course they are asking the Afghan government that we are feeding you, and you have to follow our dictates, our directives. And that's what the issue has been. And the aim was that how to create disturbance, instability in various parts of the Pakistan. And I think things are right on the record. Ajib Dawal, he has been very, open while discussing the issues at the National Security Forum.
Yes,
that we are
concept
going
of
to
offensive defense.
That's nice. Then he has been doing it. And then what about the people like Rajnath Singh? He has been saying that we are going to have the 10 parts of the Pakistan or thing like that. This is something.
And nobody takes notice of those
This is
statements.
unfortunate.
Yeah, this is
This
so
is
unfortunate. Dr. Amna, when we say let's respect the shared interest of both the countries, obviously they blame us that, you know, whatever happens in Kabul, if there's a bomb blast, they'll straight away point their fingers towards Islamabad. And we, unfortunately, we can't do much about it, because that's Hamid Karzai, no matter, whether it's Abdullah or it's Ashraf Ghani, you give them a platform and they'll malign Pakistan. Exactly, they'll be using the same tone, the same language with the Indians use. So let's not differentiate. There's no difference as such to me between the western border and eastern border. Eastern border was hostile, is hostile, will remain hostile. But this is a border which is more dangerous because we never thought about it. Unfortunately, this was our mistake. We could have done it much earlier. But now, shared interest. To us, it's a shared interest formula. For them, it's not, because it suits them that it should remain like this so that Indians can continue to carry out such activities in Pakistan. Your take, ma'am?
I think shared interest is there, and as you pointed out that Afghan leadership is not carrying a lie right now, this perception that it is in their interest to have stability and control of border.
It's very,
in
very
Afghanistan.
wrong to say, but you know, it seems they are puppets, and the real puppeteers, they are sitting in either Delhi or in Washington.
But I think that Pakistan has to take a very firm stand at this point of time. As you were mentioning before that that's the doctrine of strategic depth that was introduced by Aslam Beg. I once interviewed General Aslam Beg for my thesis of PhD. He told that it was just for Iran, and he never depended on Afghanistan. But anyways, that time is over when we were thinking that they are on our back and we can go for help and strategic depth to them. Right now, this is the time to take firm stand on Pakistani national interest, that we will not allow Indians or Afghans to come inside Pakistan, and fencing is on our side. If they are reluctant, then we are having our own point of view, and we will carry that. And as you pointed out that Trump, he is having the same idea of fencing on US border. I think that there would be no international support to Afghan point of view that there should be no fencing on Pakistan border. Pakistan border
But
should
if there is
be
a clash
fenced.
of interest between India and Pakistan, ma'am,
There
and look
won't
at
be-
the
there is
strategic
certainly-
engagement with the Indians, I'm talking about the American engagement, obviously we do understand what is going to
I
happen
think
now.
that Americans are not so conscious about border management and Indian-Pakistan issues. They just want to have their relations with India and Pakistan both. They come when we call them for mediation, and certainly India is not ready to accept any sort of mediation. They will certainly refuse, and it would be just a timely issue that Americans are coming for mediation and they will resolve the issue. They are maintaining Pakistani and Indian relations separately from the very beginning. And for Pakistan, they are very conscious that Pakistan says that, me too, what you are going to do with India, they should be, you should extend that favor to us, and though. So we should separate our relation to United States from Indian side. They never extended any dictates that how we should conduct our relationship with Afghanistan and India. They just come when there is firing exchange or so. Then they come and say that there should be peace between two nuclear powers, and that's it. They don't have any other. If you see any statement, then let me know. We are more conscious that they would support India. They would never allow India to have a war on international border. They would never allow Afghanistan to have war
But
on
Donald Trump
international
has
border.
very categorically said that we'll use India to put pressure on Pakistan. So they can't put pressure. Verbal pressure is different. I mean, what was
That
happening on the
pressure-
LOC, and interestingly, it
Yeah.
stopped a while ago, but that was pressure or divert the attention of the Pakistani media or their media or the global media for that matter.
I think that is just before assuming power. In January, he will be having totally different statement. When he will give a State of Union address to their parliament, there would be totally different guideline of their foreign policy. You will see that. This is the right now.
The 20th of January, this is going to be very interesting date, I would say.
And as a student of international relations, I think that there would be totally different policy given by the Trump, and we should not see it that there should be some hostility towards Pakistan. It is the right of Pakistan to manage our border, and Afghanistan and India has nothing to do for that. Because India is managing its own border, you know, they have started fencing, and there was no hue and cry by United States or any other nation.
Interestingly, there was no hint grab at the Pakistani side also.
Even-
we let it develop,
even-
and then we said, oh, this has happened. Once
think
they have
it
completed
is-
their dams,
it
now
is-
we are talking about that there is
Yes.
no water
Even
in our dam.
Faisal Sahab,
The
it is
point
in
is that the timing
it
is very correct, ma'am. If you diagnose the disease at the right time, then there is a cure. But
And
if the
that
cancer is
action should be
malignant
taken
and it's
also.
all over in your blood, then only God can help you, ma'am.
Only diagnosis is
can't.
not important, but we should take action right now, and this is the high time to take action.
Now, Jalsa, one more point. Richard Olson, who has been the ambassador to Pakistan and now looking after the affairs of Pakistan and Afghanistan. Interestingly, it's AFPAC, it's no more the Indian, because they said, okay, we are from a different league, sir, don't include us. What sort of role can he play? Because he does understand the dynamics of this game very well, sir.
I think he can play a very constructive role because he is aware of the realities on ground. He was here in Pakistan. I met him a number of times. He's been now there in Afghanistan also. So his advice would matter. So would the advice of the commander of the Central Command. Mr. Petraeus.
General Petraeus?
Yeah, General Petraeus, now Mr. Petraeus.
That was taken away from him.
He was one of the contenders now, for a foreign secretary there in the US, and he went to interview Trump. But what I want to say is that when he was giving an interview there, I think he gave an interview to Rusi in the UK, and there he was asked these questions about the blames which they are hurling at Pakistan about the Haqqani networks and we actually harboring terrorists and others. He actually denied that. He said that while he was there in Afghanistan, and he stayed there for the longest time ever, he said that there was no concrete proof of that. So this is what he said. So it will be important, how the transition team looks at the situation in Afghanistan for Mr. Trump. Mr. Trump, in his election rhetoric, made a mention of the need for the presence of American troops in Afghanistan because he called our nuclear program a problem. And he said that, look, there is a problem and that he would probably take the assistance of India and therefore
when he was asked about the global warming, he said the global warming doesn't bother me. Yes. But the nuclear warming bothers me. Nuclear warming of Pakistan.
But he will find out, I think, as has been said, probably, we'll have to wait till January and February.
There's a long way to go.
What he does and let him see the reality on ground.
This is going to be really interesting.
And he's been invited to Pakistan, and unlike his predecessors, who was there in the government for 8 years, he didn't find time to come here. I hope he comes and sees the situation on ground.
Because this man really needs to understand the reality, and this is the time when we should invite him and at least explain him about the real deal. So
American policies, they have a consistency. They are, as a matter of fact, debated, and there is a consistency. So the Trumps.
So they have taken. So we talk about U-turns of Imran Khan, sir. The Americans, they have taken so many U-turns.
No, U-turn. I mean, these are this is
they
part of their policy.
They use us and then they leave us.
This is part of their policy. You know that Hillary Clinton, once she visited Pakistan, she openly said that we have been very unfair, that after Afghan episode of 1980s, we went back, left these mujahideen of that time, of today's terrorists. But we will not do now. But have they not done that? I think they have done the same thing.
Chuck Hagel, once he was in the university, said that we know that Afghanistan's soil is being used by the Indians against Pakistan. But once he became the Secretary of Defense, he uttered not even a single sentence. That's the problem. That's the dilemma.
Afghanistan, India and America, they have the strategic alliance, partnership, and this logistic support agreement also. I think they are doing a lot. But as far as the Pakistan is concerned, that Pakistan has not lost its strategic and economic significance for the regional countries, but for the superpowers too. So US is not going to be the way perhaps Trump has been asking that we are going to do.
A lot of people believe that maybe it's good for Pakistan that Trump has been elected as the president, because we could always assume what Ms. Clinton would do, but this guy you never know. It could be good for Pakistan.
He's not a politician. He's a businessman. So, he's not a statesman.
Well, let's see, sir. Let's see. Ma'am, last quick comment.
I think that Pakistan should manage its foreign policy according to its national interest, and we should not follow US national interest as we are doing in the past. And as everybody mentioned that it is the US policy to abandon whatever is not required. And we should not wait for their response. We should continue to follow our interests. Whenever their interests would be matched with us, they would follow us. And since Pakistan is focusing on developing its soft power in the form of CPAC and economic prosperity, I think that would be helpful to improve the relations with other powers of the world, including the United States.
Let's hope so. Anyway, Jalsa, it was a pleasure having you, sir. Thank you very much, Dr. Saab. Ma'am, thank you so much. And that's all we have for this week. I'll see you on Monday, inshallah. Till then, you take good care of yourself. Khuda Hafiz and have a great weekend.